Good day everyone. On this video I'll be discussing about hair texture and pattern. On the previous one, I talked about hair composition and hair structure. So hair is one of the most unique and personal features we all have, and understanding our hair is the first step to unlock the best hair care routine for yourself. So we have, hair comes in different shape and different patterns. Then we have four. We have a straight hair. Then to the last one, which is the coily hair. So this is the type 1 hair to the type 4 hair. So let's break this down in few minutes. Alright, so firstly, to check your coil pattern, you're basically figuring out how your hair naturally forms when it's clean and free of styling. So how you do this is, after washing your hair, let it dry without adding any product. Then look at the natural shape. So that shape you see is the hair type that you have. If you see a straight hair, that means you have the type 1 hair. This hair doesn't hold coils. You see a straight hair. You get? Then if you see a wavy hair, you're going to see your hair in this S shape. It's going to have a S shape, but not a defined S shape, but a loose S shape. But that's what you see. That's a wavy hair, and that's the type 2 hair. And if you see a coil, a clear coil or ringlets in your hair pattern, that means you have the type 3 hair, which is the coily hair. Then the last one is the kinky hair. It's called the coily hair. That one, you're going to see coils, a very tight coils in a zigzag pattern. Very tight coils in a zigzag pattern. So this type of hair is the type 4 hair, and they don't always have a clear pattern. Then after this, hair also have subtypes. After figuring out the type of hair you have, there's subtypes to each type. We have A, B, and C. So if you have the straight hair, it can be type 1, it can be type 1A, type 1B, type 1C. So same thing for the other type. So let's discuss. Talking about the types of hair, the type 1 hair is the straight hair. So this type of hair are straight, they don't hold coils at all. And if you have the type 1A, you have a straight fine hair. Your hair is tiny, a thin hair, then it doesn't hold any coils. Then if you have the type 1B, that means you have a straight hair with a little bit thick. It has a little bit volume. Then it's also straight, no coils. Then if you have the type 1C, type 1C has a coarse texture. So that's a very strong hair. They are strong, but they are slightly bent. They are not completely straight. They are not coily, but they are slightly bent. So this kind of hair, they are straight from the root to the tip. These hair are straight from the root to the tip. That's a straight hair. Then we also have a wavy hair, which is the type 2 hair. Like I said, the wavy hair will give you this loose S shape. Yeah, you have this loose S shape on a wavy hair. Now if you have that's the type 2 hair. So if you have the type 2A, the type 2A is wavy, but they are not that visible. You can see the waves, but they are not clear. They are not that visible, and they are also fine hairs. But the type 2B, the waves are more defined, The waves are more defined, and you have a normal air. And the type 2C has a very strong wave. Sometimes they almost coil, but they won't coil. But a very strong wave, very defined one with a quartz texture. So this type of air, they are not straight and they are not coily. They are somewhere in between it. You get so the coily air. The coily air is the type 3 air, and this air has a defined coils, just like it sounds, defined coils, and has these ringlets. So if you have the type 3 one, that means you have coils but loose coils. Then if you have the type 3B, you have a well-defined coils, a tight coils with a bouncing ringlet. Then if you have the type 3C, that means you have a very tight coils. So this kind of air, they form spiral loop from the tip, from the root to the tip. You see coils, well-defined coils. Then you also have the coily, or you call it the kinky air. That's the type 4 air. These ones, they have small coils in a zigzag pattern. So this air, they don't give you a clear pattern. They don't give you a clear pattern, and they are the most common one in Africa. They are the most common one out there. So they give you a zigzag form and a small coils. They don't have this defined shape, these defined patterns. So that's the type 4 air. To check your ear thickness, you need to take out a single strand from your hair and feel it between your fingers. If your hair feels very thin, that means you have a fine hair. And if your hair feels thick and normal, that means you have a medium hair. And if your hair feels thick and strong, that means you have a coarse hair. Then you also need to check your hair density. To check your hair density, you need to look at the mirror, and if your scalp is visible, if you can easily see your scalp, that means you have a low density hair. And if your scalp is not that visible, that means you have a medium hair. And if your scalp is not visible at all, if you can't see your scalp at all, that means you have a high density hair. Then the hair density is not always the same. Some parts has more density than some other parts, so that's normal. Then hair density and thickness, they affect how a fade looks, and they determine how hair will be cut. So good fades come from understanding both hair thickness and density. And patchy fades often happen when density is uneven, or maybe the follicle grows in different direction. So these are the few things to know, to understand about your hair. So in the next video, I'll be talking about hair growth and hair loss.